Welcome back, everybody, to Bleeding Edge Capital's Crypto Classroom. I am so happy to be back. Sorry for the time that we have been MIA. Me and Steve have had a really difficult time lining up our schedules to consistently sit down and bring you guys this content, but we have found a solution. We have a very, very smart member of our team that has just been added. Roan, he is going to help me co-host. I'm sure Steve will pop in now and then for episodes going forward, and I'm sure we'll have guests, but for now, it'll just be Roan. He helps us here at the fund, and I'll let him explain who he is and what he's doing for Bleeding Edge Capital. Roan.
Hey, nice to meet you all. As Jake said, my name is Roan. I have been working, or I guess semi-working for Jake over the past year or so, but it really stems from a more of a mentor relationship side. I met Jake through professional connections and then reached out to him and I was like, hey man, I really respect the way you're living your life, how you're living your life. I'd love to learn more about it. So we really started off just talking about how we live our lives, how to live a healthy life, who we want to be. Jake provided a lot of guidance. And then over time, we also started talking about this fund that he's working on. And I've had the opportunity to be able to contribute to some of the work that he's doing. So I'm excited to be here, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here too, Roan. And don't undersell yourself that much, brother. You help a lot here. A lot. You have a very analytical mind, and I'm envisioning that it's going to be wonderful for the audience here. Um, but yes, thank you. And I guess what do you want to learn about today? What are you trying to figure out about blockchain and Web3 in this crazy industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. For people who don't know me, which I guess is most people who would be listening to this podcast, I do not, I've had no experience with crypto prior to getting to know Jake. So a lot of this is pretty new to me. I'm pretty experienced when it comes to handling data and technology. But this crypto space in particular, I've been learning as I go, so to speak. One of the things that I've noticed while working with cryptocurrencies and analyzing transactions is that when I look at one transaction, it's really like a bunch of different transactions all bundled together. And I would love to dive a little deeper into that, into why it's that way and what's happening underneath the hood.
Sure. Yeah, I know. It can be pretty wild. You think you're swapping $10 and you're just trying to buy a stable coin or park your money on chain, and then you go into the transaction details and you're like, holy shit, it hit 7 different wallets to give me my 10 tether. And it's very difficult to understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's a lot of people when they first get in this space. So I think I'll start by revisiting some concepts in the what is a token episode. So to anyone out there wondering why one transaction is a bunch of different microtransactions in crypto, you first have to understand that tokens are immutable and they can't be replicated. So when you say, or we can look at it like this right now with your debit card, you overdraft your account, you got nothing in savings, but the transaction still goes through sometimes, and you have a negative account, negative balance in your checking. That's because, or that's allowed because these databases have no connection to the actual value tied to those numbers on your screen.
You're talking
They're just
about
one,
the financial databases of financial institutions.
yeah, banks,
Mm-hmm.
Visa, any of them. The entire world runs on credit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, the settlement times for a transaction from these institutions, it has a lag. So you can have a real-time transaction and then they settle their ledger at a different day and time. And it's all tied to the final number of circulating dollars controlled by the Fed. But all of your dollars are credit. Even the paper money, in your wallet, it's credit. We have the full faith and credit of the United States government that dollar is redeemable for $1 worth of whatever, but there's nothing even tied to the dollar. So it's really just smoke. And that also means the value of our currency is directly correlated to the level of trust and or corruption that our government has. If you go to like Latin American countries and you see where corruption is greater, you'll find that a lot of their currencies are debasing at a rapid rate, or in Africa or in some remote parts of Eastern Europe, because corruption's higher in some of those countries. We're fortunate to be in America where our dollar is relatively uncorrupted, but we're seeing that accelerate. I digress though. In crypto, it's nothing like that, right? Like in crypto, if you want 100 tether, there actually has to be 100 of those tokens. Um, Tether doesn't have a lever, or USDC. These are stable coins. So they only make one token for every $1 that is in a bank somewhere, or one Swiss franc, or one denarii, or one peso, whatever it may be, depending
What's
on
a
the
tether
stable
coin?
coin.
What are you talking about there?
Tether is it's a stable coin. What that means is the token's price doesn't change. Well, unless you're an accountant and you really care about the fourth decimal. But down to a thousandth of a penny,
Okay.
Tether has maintained its peg to $1. So if you have $1,000 you want to invest in crypto, but you don't know what to buy yet, I always recommend as the first step is just get your money on chain. So you're going to want to exchange your cash for a stable coin because it's not going to move in value.
Okay.
If you just go buy Bitcoin, as we've seen just today, this morning, we went from 60 to I think 56. Yeah, it's at 57.1 right now. So we're down, 4% on the morning. So you could lose value if you wanted to wait and make a decision. It's in your best interest to park your money in stable coins because it won't go down,
Yeah.
outside of the transaction fees it takes to own that tether.
Okay.
Um,
So they're
and
like an
every
intermediary between your dollar and buying an asset, where stable coins are pegged to a certain currency. Like USDT, USD Tether would be pegged to the US dollar.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly right. And they do that by, well, Tether's a little different than USDC, and we can make another episode of the differences of stable coins, but I
Yeah.
think a better example is USDC because they really do have the most practical way of doing it. You essentially deposit $100 and then they mint 100 tokens,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for every circulating token
Mm-hmm.
in the USDC protocol, there is exactly that many dollars in a bank somewhere.
Okay.
And when Silvergate went down, they held about 10% of USDC's treasury, and USDC did depeg. So like the
Hmm.
biggest risk of crypto was actually banks,
Hmm.
the on and off ramp for crypto. Because at the end of the day, this all needs to end up in a bank.
Yeah.
Um, you make a bunch of money, you're going to need to withdraw it at some point, right?
Yeah.
And the only way to do that, to get it off chain and actually go spend that money, is through, traditional finance.
Mm-hmm.
Until we can figure out a way to have consensus, create a card that's tied to your wallet, um, that has no association to any banks, that we're kind of stuck in that.
Yeah.
And I don't think the SEC will let that happen anyways. So,
That was just to give
um,
a little background because you said it, but like not everyone might know what that is. Hell, I don't even fully know what that is yet, but I just
yeah,
wanted to
no,
clarify.
that's perfect. That's your role here. We're trying to educate the audience. So that's perfect. So back to the transactions. So now that we understand that these tokens have to be um, generated or present, I think that's a better way of saying it. They have to be present. They have to actually be in the wallet. These aren't
Mm-hmm.
just values changing in a database.
Yeah.
These are actual assets. So when I'm on Kraken, because you're looking at all of our transactions, and I want to pick up an order of one of our coins, one of our tokens. I place the order with stable coins because I like to park the money in stable places until I deploy it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I have 10,000 Tether and I'm just sitting on it waiting to buy. Bitcoin has a lot of liquidity. So it's probably going to be a 1-to-1. Let's think. I think Solana is very aggregated. So I'm sorry, it's very dispersed. So Solana, if I want to exchange 10,000 Tether for price is like 200, let's say, I don't know, 200 Sol,
Mm-hmm.
roughly. Kraken at that exact moment might not have 200 Sol to authorize that transaction
Mm-hmm.
because Kraken's a huge exchange, but it also processes billions of dollars of volume a day. And that shuffle of assets is a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
for their treasury to be constantly depleted and replenished on a nanosecond, or however, whatever the latency of the network is, that's how many tokens could leave the treasury because it's all automated by code, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like there's someone there controlling and approving, right? This all needs to work in a trustless code ran environment for us all to not care who owns what or who has authority over what, essentially. So for that to happen, we have two other players we have to consider. We have liquidity providers, often referred to in news articles if you're out there researching and stuff, as LPs. Those are liquidity providers. And then you have AMMs. You'll see those acronyms while you're out there researching as well, or
Mm-hmm.
automated market makers. So an AMM is Uniswap. Uniswap would be a protocol that assists what I'm about to explain. And then a liquidity provider, there's a lot of them on Ethereum. One of them could be MakerDAO. Um, Another one could be Curve DAO,
Mm-hmm.
Finance. There's a lot. And for every blockchain, if you're looking, if you're interested in more of the infrastructure of liquidity, every blockchain needs an AMM and an LP to build an exchange. So if
Mm.
you're really bullish on Cosmos, you could put like, 3% into Cosmos, then 2% into those three things, and you'll I think most people be happy with the kind of strategy and returns you'd see. But
The
because no one
strategy and
design
returns of putting it into Cosmos and then also putting it into an AMM liquidity provider. What are you saying there?
Yeah, yeah, and an exchange. So like if you really believed in the community, no matter what happens, like meme coins, NFTs, a
Mm-hmm.
really killer game or app that someone builds, those tokens will need to leave and exit wallets regardless of whatever's built.
Mm.
And because that's how people interact with crypto, right? It's an exchange of value.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're really bullish on a community, I believe it's a much more conservative way to invest by doing the picks and shovels, man. Not trying to pick the next killer app, but instead invest in the infrastructure that any app would have to use to succeed in that community,
Interesting.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, and you can do that for every blockchain.
Hmm.
Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, Cosmos, like Sui, Aptos, yeah, I could name 20. Like they all need these things.
Are you
Um,
investing in it by buying, like, if let's use Cosmos for example, um,
sure.
instead of just buying Cosmos and having it in your wallet, are you saying you're investing in the liquidity provider by giving them like US dollars, or are you giving them Cosmos?
So you just buy their token
Okay, gotcha.
because they all make fees on their token. You'll see like in those transactions that it's swapping in and out of ETH or something else and taking a fee on the way down,
Mm-hmm.
right? In each transaction, you see a fee when you click in.
Yeah.
So like in this transaction path we're talking about, 10,000 tether for 200 Sol. To get that Sol on Kraken, I might have sent tether, it got converted into wrapped ether got converted into wrapped Sol. If I'm doing this on Ethereum, wrapped Sol then got converted into Sol, and then I got my 200 sold, but maybe it took, you know, 30, 50 tether worth of Ethereum because it's using that tether to swap in and out of ETH to get all of
Mm-hmm.
that together. But before we break that down, let's get into these two people. So liquidity providers and automated market makers here. The liquidity providers are people that have a lot of tokens and they need a platform, right, that can facilitate a smart contract where I deposit my tokens and in a set time frame I get more tokens back. That's the agreement that this protocol has. Their terms are anywhere from 30 to 180 days. I like 90-day terms. That seems to
Mm-hmm.
be a moderate, risk and return profile. So like I could loan Kraken 200 Sol 6% 90 days, and then I
Mm-hmm.
will get 12. I'll get right 212
6% of
back.
200.
Yeah, whatever that is, I'll get that much Sol back. It's not in US dollars. Sol could tank while it's in there,
Yeah.
but I'll still get that much Sol back. It's all denominated in the currency you post.
Okay. Can I try to tell you what I'm getting here and you can tell me where I'm going wrong?
That would be wonderful.
Okay. So right now we're looking at primarily liquidity providers. So I'm going to call you Jake, the guy who's going to be the liquidity provider here for this example. Jake,
Okay.
you're a liquidity provider. You really believe in um, what are we talking about? Solana?
Yep, Solana. Yep.
Okay. You really believe in Solana, and you want to give back to the community. Also, you want to make some interest on what you give back to the community. So you're going to essentially loan however much Solana you want to give to Kraken so that Kraken can use it to fulfill transactions. And then at the end of an agreed upon time period, like 90 days or 180 days, let's say you gave them 200 Solana, you'd get 200 Solana back, plus the agreed upon interest, which in your example was 6%. So you'd get like 200 is your principal, plus another 6% of Solana because you gave them that loan. So that would be 12. So you put in 200, you get back 212.
That's exactly it. And you really said something that is important for the audience. So I want to highlight you have to be long term on the asset because you are locking it up. As soon as it's posted, you can't touch it. This is all code enforced. There's no one you can call. It's a
Mm-hmm.
protocol. When's the last time you called the founder of SMTP because an email didn't send?
True.
Right? Like you don't even know who that is. I don't. It was
Yeah.
like a community of hundreds of people in the 80s that built it. These are protocols. So it's really important that the audience understands that the people that are doing this definitely are long term because you're like you believe in Solana, and I do.
Yeah.
So you have to if you do this with tokens that you might sell in 90 days or 180 days, obviously there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing you can if it zeroes out while it's being loaned. But that's exactly it.
Now
Um,
that touches on another question I have on liquidity
yeah.
providers, which is if you give your loan on day one and it's worth a certain price, and then on day 180 when you get your Solana back, it's worth a different price. Like, do you
Mhm.
still get that different price? So you're getting the change in price plus the interest that you made?
Yeah, so and I'm sure you've noticed this. Every transaction, it doesn't matter, is denominated in the currency
Mm-hmm.
that you are transacting in.
Yeah.
So it's 6% of Solana.
Yeah.
Fuck, fuck the price.
Okay. So it's unit based only.
Correct.
Got
So
it.
I'm going to get 12 Solana in 90 days is what I'm actually agreeing to.
Okay. Got it.
But you have to be bullish, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like Solana could go from 200 to $80 in 180 days and you still have 212 at the end. But
Yeah.
your value will be, obviously destroyed.
Okay.
So,
So you're like locked in for that 180 days.
correct.
Got it.
I like 90 days because you can compound four times,
Mm-hmm.
right? 200 to 212, 212 to 230, 230 to 255, 255. In one year, I could almost, increase my unit basis by, a third,
Mm-hmm.
and I put it's still a $10,000 buy. So like the returns, if the appreciation happens, is significant,
So why
right? I
doesn't
was buying,
everybody do this?
well, one, no one, there are people doing it. They're just sophisticated. Um,
Oh, I see.
yeah, like I wouldn't say that your average Joe's doing this. I would say this is like an intermediate crypto thing.
Got it.
Um, I would say advanced is running like ZK proving stations or, you know, um, staking and being a part of a DAO and governance. And there's a lot of other stuff you can do, but I would say like this is an intermediate thing.
Got it.
And honestly, for it to be life changing, you need a lot of tokens. So,
You got
like
to be
if you're
loaded.
loading, yeah, if you're loading 0.2 ETH at 2% every 90 days, like you're not going to feel that, but you'll feel 100 ETH at 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
You're making 2 ETH every quarter, 2, then 3, then 5. It could add up in a couple of years. You'd be making a lot of ETH if you're bullish on the project, right? That's the caveat.
Okay.
And then you nailed LPs. So now we have the automated market makers. This is like Uniswap. I post my tokens into a liquidity protocol like Aave or Curve Finance or MakerDAO on Ethereum at least. They work with, so I don't have to do anything after I click, you know, put my shit up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Post. They will work with Uniswap, Zero X. They'll work with whoever because there's multiple of these, and they will basically just make yield on the transaction fees. This is all code, by the way. When I say they, I'm talking about the protocols, not a company or humans. The
Mm-hmm.
protocols will interact with these AMMs. And what these AMMs do are like the intermediary between all these different liquidity providers across the entire ethos of blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be able to do cross chain swaps. If I'm in Kraken, it works with like 10 blockchains.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this in the token episode. Bitcoin doesn't work with Ethereum. It's two different code bases. Ethereum has a lot more logic. Bitcoin has a different accounting system, UTXO versus a standard ledger. There's just a lot different. So the AMM would take the ETH I posted. If
Mm-hmm.
someone wanted to swap ETH for Bitcoin, it would need to be able to go to the Bitcoin network, pick up those tokens. If I'm doing that inside of Kraken, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would need to grab those tokens, pay the fees, whatever. That way, when I click buy or swap ETH to Bitcoin, Kraken can offer that service
Yeah.
because Uniswap and all the other LPs are working together to bridge liquidity across all of these different fractured networks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's all automated. And I'm sure, as you've seen, it could be um, one swap between LPs, or it could be 20.
Okay, I see.
And it really depends on the congestion of each network. It depends on the demand, right? How much gas you're going to pay on each one, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
their method of throttling compute is. You're going to pay for that. Um, and the user experience is ideal because you're not waiting 2 days, right, for that treasury to have enough to fulfill the order. As soon as that price happens, it's executed. So, I mean, I can trade constantly without worrying about, oh, I hope Kraken has this.
Okay. So you
And
got
then it
your.
also
Oh, go
it
ahead.
gives you. I was to say it gives yield to everyone else, and I talk a lot, so this really hits on a final point of the entire industry. Since there's no third party, in the middle like a bank that's doing all, because the banks do all this, and they make a lot of money doing it. Those things are still existing. Like you still need these things, right? It's not as big. If you think about Fed, central bank, national bank, regional bank, consumer, and how that liquidity trickles down
Mm-hmm.
and how it's all controlled by a lever. it looks a lot different in crypto, but it's the same, overarching theme, right? You need liquidity as a bank. You just do, or else you're insolvent. And if you have a run, you're bankrupt. And we see that all the time. And people mismanage that all the time because humans are doing it, you know? In crypto, since this is decentralized and no one, um, there's not one company sitting in between you and your liquidity, there are other people that make the bank's money
Mm-hmm.
by providing these services because they're still required, regardless if there's a governing body and a large corporation or not. So it's basically democratizing the yield banks get to all of the different roles throughout crypto. And some smart entrepreneur realized it and was like, shit, we still need liquidity providers, even if this isn't a printing press. So I can make money being an LP. And then someone else is like, well, all these LPs need to bridge their token, so I can make money just helping them and
Mm-hmm.
taking a little cut, and that's basically how this industry has been built.
Okay, got it. So you're Jake, the LP. Let's make another LP for this example, Steve. So Jake, you're an LP. You've put in, 200 Solana. Steve has put in 100 Solana. I'm me, and I want to buy 300 Solana. So I would put in a buy order, or I guess in this example, a swap, because we're going from a US Tether to Solana.
There
And
you go.
that's all I got to do for my end. I just
Yes.
say, hey, I want 300 Solana for this much Tether. But on the back end, it's going to go to this automated market maker. And correct me if I'm wrong at any point. I'm just trying to understand. And an automated market maker is like an algorithm that runs and says, okay, Jake wants 300 Solana. Where can I find 300 Solana? Or no, Roan wants 300 Solana. Where can I find this? Okay, Jake has 200. Steve has 100. So I'll swap with Jake. I'll swap with Steve. Collect it all in one nice, tidy package and give it to Roan.
Yep.
Okay,
That's
gotcha. What am I
exactly
missing there?
that. In 90 or 180 days, whatever terms is, it needs to return. It just treats it like another buy order, really. It needs to
Mm-hmm.
return that much plus interest to that wallet.
Mm-hmm.
So as the AMM or the algorithm is really just running, it's going to take some fees and keep refilling that chest.
Which would be gas fees.
Yep. Yep.
Gotcha.
Gas, other networks, network usage fee, that you'll see them labeled differently, but it's the same idea.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone needs to make money. These blockchains need to make money, and they need revenue to stay alive, because these are protocols. So they need to, when they're built, they're thinking zero people running it, right? Like Linux, right? If the 20,000 people that supported Linux stopped working, it would still exist. There just
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be new versions, right? Um, they think about longevity in that sense. They eventually, like every founder of these things, want to step away, because these are protocols. There's so many things they need to do to support the level of use that they envision in the future. They still are very hands-on, but I have a feeling the majority of these founders are like, one day I'll just completely automate this.
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin is a $1.2 trillion automated bank, essentially, with zero employees. If you think about the fundamentals of a bank, you put money in, they keep it safe, right? They give you a little bit of interest if you have a money market account, but otherwise, that's all it does. And that's Bitcoin's promise, but there's zero employees, you know? It's all automated by code. It's super interesting. Um,
I do have a
so,
question on AMMs, automated market makers. Where the
yeah.
hell do they run? Like, how does this work? You said it's code. So, like, is this running on a server somewhere? Does someone pay for this to run on a server?
So it's very interesting. Yes, and yes. Um, it is code running on a server, but it really depends on the architecture of a blockchain. There's a lot of decisions you can make, a lot of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Solana has a very centralized approach with one validator node that is hosted by their servers, where Ethereum is hosted by it could be up to thousands of nodes, um, that all have, equitable, accurate share of the compute to run it. So just to keep it more decentralized and safe,
And by
you
node, you
know.
just mean a computer.
Yeah, a computer. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Um, and what server they choose is totally up to them. They could have a decentralized server network like Arweave or Filecoin. Well, I guess that's
Hmm.
more storage. But there are decentralized compute providers.
Yeah,
They also could be in AWS or Azure. They could be anywhere really.
yeah.
It's
AWS
really
and
up to
Azure are cloud services.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, yes, cloud services. Yeah, um, it really does depend. At least in terms of the consensus mechanism, where Bitcoin, all of it is ran through proof of work, which means there are millions of volunteers for profit across the globe that plug a computer into the wall and run the Bitcoin network and,
Hmm.
mine and approve transactions and all this other stuff,
Yeah.
creating even more decentralization, right?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, the AMMs are going to be running on different things. It depends on the network. So like Uniswap specifically runs on Ethereum,
Hmm.
and Ethereum is just this large virtual machine supported by all of these computers across the globe. And as long as those computers remain plugged in, Uniswap will exist in perpetuity.
Hmm.
But for you to be investing in Uniswap, you're betting on Ethereum being here long term
Yeah.
because Uniswap wouldn't work independent of Ethereum or any other blockchain, really.
Okay, got it.
But that's why you see 20 transactions for one
Yeah.
transaction. It's not an easy thing, but it allows us to not need the blessings of Jamie Dimon to create wealth and retain it. Um, and not everyone cares about that. I would argue a lot of people don't care about that. But I think people are waking up. Cancel culture is getting bigger. Um, there are people being fired from JP Morgan Chase, at least back in the day, while Jamie Dimon, he made that edict. Like, if you buy crypto, you're getting fired, even personal investments, which is crazy because JP Morgan has been building a blockchain since 2017. And he constantly calls it a scam. He constantly, fear mongers the average Joe while he's going all in on the technology. And someone with an authority problem, like an entrepreneur, that just pisses me off because he scared my parents away from 300% returns, which they've waited 22 years for, right? He's destroying their financial future. Behind their back, he's investing in this space in a big way. Same with BlackRock, same with all of them. Bank of America, Citigroup, they all have their hands in a bunch of different companies that are producing blockchain technology. And at the same time, they are telling everyone this stuff is dangerous. It's used for money laundering, which is true, but the internet is also used for child porn. So, like, has that ever not been a variable to consider? You know, I don't
That
know.
is then you can go like there's some shady shit on the internet. Got
Mhm.
it.
I mean, Silk Road. I know you were like in sixth grade when that was a thing, but that was a big deal, bro. Like there was a time for 7 years where I could go to the dark web and order a human baby. I could order a bazooka. I could order 10 pounds of coke for like 50,000 Bitcoin, and no one would know. And it came through the United States Postal Service. Like, that's crazy, but that was a thing. And that's the thing they keep returning to about Bitcoin being a criminal enterprise and all this other stuff. Like, there's no Godfather. Satoshi Nakamoto walked away, destroyed the keys. There have been millions of cybersecurity experts that have went through every line of code in Bitcoin, and there's no backdoor. He opened the box and let it be. People like Michael Saylor would not be putting billions of company profits into Bitcoin if that weren't true. And there wouldn't be $3 trillion in this industry if that weren't true. So it's not like there's no grand scheme here. It's genuinely a protocol that will change how we interact with the internet. A lot of them are, for a lot of different reasons. But that is we need things like this, duct tape solutions for now. I still think LPs, AMMs, like I really do think that's a very solid architecture. It just the problem is these networks are too expensive. Eventually, the fees will be um, destroyed by scaling. We already see that in Ethereum. Um, Transaction costs are significantly less on Ethereum than they used to be because of layer twos and how they're building out this modular ecosystem, which we could do another episode on. But, you know, it's hard for people to look down the road. In a couple years, I'm very confident these swap fees are going to be to the third or fourth decimal. And it won't even be noticeable, you know.
Still important to track, though.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, apparently. That really bothers me, but you're right. I'm glad you know that. 'Cause or feel that because I literally I'm not that accurate, I guess. I thought I was, but I'm not. You know, what is close? I feel like it's too subjective.
For a little bit
I
of
guess
background, we have to track, all of the funds transactions, and it's kind of a pain. So, to the audience, if you have any recommendations on automated methods to track transactions, reach out.
please. Yes, for us both, please. That would be wonderful. But did you have any more questions about why there are that many transactions? We can close it out if not. Until
No,
next
I
time.
mean, I have plenty of questions, but not about specific transactions. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll save that for the audience till next time. Thank you all for tuning in. We deeply appreciate the time you give us, and hopefully, you were able to extract something of value from here. Until next week, take care of one another. See you guys.
See ya.